Guess who's back with another book tag? This guy. They're probably getting really sick and tired of all these book tags. I don't really care. So the 12 books I'd save in the event of apocalypse? Oh, there's only two parameters. That's nice. Choose books that you've read since being on BookTube. Okay. Do not choose books in a volume or a series? This is going to be impossible. Cue the intro. Welcome back to Kevin Reads, where I'm here with another tag. This is the 12 books I'd save in the event of apocalypse. This was created by Mark at Book Time with Elvis. And then Greg, another bibliophile, Reads did this. And then Pat at Book Time with Pat did it. And then Bob at Robert G. Reader of Books did it. And Bob tagged me. And I don't think Mark invented it as a tag. I think it was a video, but then it's kind of morphed into that. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. But I will link all 4 of their videos below so you can check them out. Mark created this basically as an idea that spawned off of some of the presidential conversations with the president of Ukraine and his anxiety towards some of that, some of the things that were said and how it made him feel. And I think those are good things because I've had some great ideas that have spawned off of other things. My Let Me Know series, some of the great video ideas that I've had that have been comments from you all. You can find great things from the weirdest of places. And so I definitely applaud Mark in that. This is also something that deals, the politics have driven this a little bit, and I do not like to get into politics on my channel. I will say my political viewpoint is different than most of the people that I'm friends with on BookTube. So yeah, there's that. But nevertheless, I am friends with those people on BookTube, and I respect their opinions and their stances and insights. So what really drew me, though, was the parameters, because there's 2 parameters, which should seem easy. First one is choose books that you've read since being on BookTube. Well, that is a varying scale for most people because it depends on their tenure on BookTube. But I have been on BookTube for over a year, and I've read quite a bit of books in that year, so I have a pretty good sample. What really made it challenging and interesting was number 2, because you do not choose books that are part of a series or a volume or collection. Well, I read a lot of series. I read short story collections, volumes, omnibus collections. Yeah, that made things very difficult. And so it was a really neat exercise because I took my spreadsheet, I pivoted out the data based on rating, based on books that were series, standalone, and whatnot. And I took the best of the best and kind of moved for some people off, some people on. And I came up with 12 interesting books that I'm going to talk about. And then I'm going to tag some people. So let's dive right into this. Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451, a classic sci-fi book, definitely well worth your read if you haven't read it already. Definitely worth a reread as well. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of themes that still are ever present in today. A thriller, Robert Krass, Hostage, great book. I flew through this thing. Krass's writing is just phenomenal. If you like thrillers and you haven't read Hostage, definitely worth your time. Another great kind of sci-fi thriller, Dark Matter from Blake Crouch, probably his best entry. I read everything but Abandoned from Crouch, so I read all of his back catalog as well. Most people, when it comes to when they know a little bit about Blake Crouch, Dark Matter, Recursion, Upgrade, some of his recent books, maybe the Wayward Pines trilogy gets in there, but there's some other back books as well, standalone books, some other series books like the Locked Doors books. But yeah, he's a great writer. Yeah, who would have thought a Western on here, huh? Louis L'Amour, The Quick and the Dead, the first Louis L'Amour book that I read. Yeah, if you would ask me, 2 years ago, hey, I'm going to have you do your top 12 books and you're going to have some Louis L'Amour on there, would you believe that? No, I would never believe that. I would ask, what kind of drugs you're taking. But here we are. And little spoiler, this is not the only Louis L'Amour book on this list. Pat will love this one. The Catcher in the Rye, Salinger, classic book, Holden Caulfield. all the various interpretations of the meaning of this classic piece of literature. Yeah, it definitely is on here. One of my favorite reads in the last year. Yeah, really enjoyed this. You knew he was going to be on here. Revival from Stephen King. For those of you who are adverse to King, maybe been turned off by King based on what you have read, this is probably some of the best writing from King. When you look at Misery or The Shining, Revival probably is up there as well because it has a lot of great elements that are King. You have some weirdness, which is always great at King, some supernatural elements, but you also have coming of age story, which King does really well. You have a very succinct book. It's about 450 pages, and it's not a 900-page chunker like he's normally his bloated books. It actually has a quasi-good ending, and I think the pacing is really well. I think from a literary standpoint, this is some of King's better work, especially recently, versus Misery and The Shining, which were, earlier King. So definitely worth checking out. High Lonesome by Louis L'Amour. Yes, another Louis L'Amour book on this list. Yeah, I just, in the last, year, 14 months, Louis L'Amour has been a staple. I read quite a bit. But yeah, this is a really, really good book. Definitely worth, like I tell all the time, a 150-page book at best, and it just packs a story. You cannot believe how much is in this. He just moves things along. Settings that you just feel like you're there. Characters that you connect with. Yeah, it's all really well done. For Steve Donahue, there's definitely going to be a nonfiction book. I'm slowly making my way through some nonfiction, getting my feet wet with nonfiction. In the Heart of the Sea is a recent book that I read with Josh, already overbooked, but probably my favorite nonfiction book I've read thus far. Definitely a really good one. I cannot stress reading this enough. It's such a good tale. It really doesn't read like, at least what I have read so far, and I kind of still typecast what a nonfiction book is. This reads more like fiction, in my opinion, more like kind of almost a thriller. You don't feel like you're reading text. And so I think that's really indicative of a good author, especially from a nonfiction standpoint, at least in my very green point of view. John Grisham, The Partner, one of my favorite John Grisham books on the list. Yeah, it's an interesting premise. Grisham always writes really good thrillers. I struggle finding bad Grisham books. There's going to be an occasional one that's going to be a stinker, but 90% of the time you're going to get an enjoyable read. Some of them, the highs are going to be highs. Some of them it's going to be good. But yeah, this one's great. So you definitely should check that out. Still probably my favorite book review. Catcher in the Rye and the Tommyknockers, one of my both better book reviews for me for different reasons. I was reading this and I put it off for a long time because I was reading through all of King's works, which I have done. But this book is so decisive amongst constant readers of Stephen King because people either love it or they hate it. And I put it off because of that. And I'm very disappointed in myself because I should have read this a long time ago. This was great. I really enjoyed it. Again, it's one of my favorite reviews on the channel. That and A Catcher in the Rye, which I read that one because I wanted to read it, but I also felt I really needed to do a good job on that book review because of Pat, and I felt like I did a good job for her. But this one's a really good one too. If you haven't, checked out this review, you should. It's a longer one, but I really feel like I did a good job. Yeah, 25% of this list is Louis L'Amour. Would you have thought that? Crazy, huh? But Flint from Louis L'Amour, a great story, a great character. I was probably entered Louis L'Amour's catalog at the best place I could. There are some others that I know that people talk about as well that are back there, going to be picked up eventually. But I read some great ones, and I'm reading through the Sackett series, which doesn't count on this list. But, yeah, Louis L'Amour, fantastic read, Flint. And then last but certainly not least, and you've got to be shocked so far if you're like, how has he not talked about this book yet? Well, Jurassic Park. I mean, it's still going to be on my list for a long time. It just got the sentimental place in my heart. There's a lot of, it's just such a good book, and it's the book that got me really into reading. And yeah, it's gonna find its way onto some of these lists because of that. And this is the edition that I haven't read through. I've just kind of flipped through it, and I kind of keep on my shelf back there as a kind of like a trophy. But this was from Christina at Paper Pages Possibilities. She gifted this to me. It's fantastic. But yeah, one of my favorite books, and it's in my top 12. So with that being said, I'm going to tag some other people in this tag, and that is Novel Insights, Steve Donahue, Maeve Ever Books, Mary Andrea, Storm Reads, Richardson Reads, Books with Sam, Living Under a Rock, Christina Winikoff, Aaron Read a Book, Uncommon Reader, David Novak Reads Poetry, Hannah's Books, Jim's Books Reading and Stuff, and the Grape Jelly Library. You have all been tagged in the 12 books I'd save in the event of an apocalypse. Thanks again to Mark for creating this video. Thanks to Bob for tagging me in this video. Pat, Greg, you all did a great job. And I will talk to you all in the next one. Thanks.